if I matter, then so do my desires, and that means that it matters that it matters that I want to have my death in a reasonable time frame and in a reasonable manner. Why doesn't that matter?
Exactly.
Like, why doesn't that matter? Why you don't honor that?
As sentient beings, we find ourselves thrown into a world that inflicts immense pain and suffering. So having the option of a graceful exit should be seen as a basic, universal human right. Since our existence is better to never have been, we should all have the right to die. Welcome to the Right to No Longer Exist, a Right to Die podcast, featuring your hosts, Kevin and Danny. In this show, we attempt to change the perception of society's views of voluntary euthanasia and what true autonomy could look like.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Right to No Longer Exist, the Right to Die podcast. This is Kevin. I'm joined with, as always, Danny, and we have our special guest Lilla here with us, and we're here to talk about anything and all things Right to Die, as always. But we have an interesting topic to talk about, where Lilla brings up a lot of awesome points. She has an Instagram called that Liberty Bitch, and yeah, we're happy to have you, and thanks for coming and talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for being on. We knew each other for about I think over a year now, so we're good friends. So it's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. All right, so what my connection to the Right to Die movement is? Well, I've been a writer for pretty much all my life, and one of the topics that I deal with is death, because that's something that we are not talking about like at all, especially in my country. I'm dialing in from Hungary, and I don't know whether this is a problem elsewhere or not, or how big of a problem it is, but here it's like you don't talk about death, and especially not self-directed death, because the typical response if you try to talk about it is, that's not allowed. Like with these exact words, that's not allowed, or don't even think about it. And being the contrarian asshole I am, I'm gonna think about stuff that I'm told not to think about. That's why I do what I do. That's what art is about to me, and that's what the freedom of expression, First Amendment, is about. And if people don't like it, that's their problem. One of the first things one of the first things that brought the Right to Die movement to my radar was I was graduating high school when Kevorkian came on the scene, and he made big waves and big media attention, and that's where I heard this whole idea, and it got me thinking, hey, if our pets have that option, then why not us humans? Because like we don't want to put through our cats and dogs through the final stages of cancer or whatever, and we have the option to put them down, or it even happens if just there's no room for them, or no owner anymore, or whatever. It's just basically a convenient option to deal with them, and whether you agree with it or not, it happens. But why doesn't it happen with people who can actually tell you that they want it? That's what struck me as weird, because like seriously, people can actually tell you what they want, and we don't honor that. So that was my first initial contact with the Right to Die movement, and I thought it was actually about the right to die, but apparently it's not, because the discussions around this transformed into this weird bureaucratic system where the law technically allows you to choose to die, but you have to meet a bunch of criteria. And if you have to meet a bunch of criteria to get something, that's not a right, that's a privilege. Especially when there is such a narrow criteria going on. Like most places, the minimum is that you have to have some sort of physical diagnosis going on, whether terminal or just something that doesn't change, like, I don't know, paraplegia or whatever. But you have to have a justification for wanting to die. And I think that's pretty absurd, because nobody asks for a justification for, like, why do you want kids, or why do you want to get married, or why do you want to buy a house, or why do you want a particular job. These are major life decisions, just like your manner and time of death is a major life decision. And nobody asks for any kind of qualifications for that. And people do make bad decisions, and we don't protect them from all of them. And what kind of world would it be like if we did? I mean, that would be fucking prison. But that's the whole point. So I think the current right to die movement is missing the point and missing the mark by a mile, because it doesn't address the fact that a lot of people have no medical reasons, but they still want to die in a controlled and secure manner. And that's the other thing. The problem, that one of the questions was, like, what's the problem with suicide prevention? One of the major problems is that as a result of suicide prevention and the laws around it, it's kind of a risky business to be around somebody who is planning to die by suicide, like, for whatever reason. If you know what's going to happen, you have to tell the authorities, like, you have to, or you get in trouble, kind of. Yeah. And that is like that is not fair, because, like, people don't exist in a vacuum. Sometimes, especially when you're afraid of failure or something going wrong, it would be beneficial if you could have someone there and supervise the process, and you could die just in a way that you have the peace of mind that it's not gonna go bad. Because when it does go bad, that usually comes with consequences. First of all, it could come with lifelong disabilities, like, I don't know, mangled faces and stuff like that. Or it could come with, and it most often does come with, being locked up in a psych ward and treated in very inhumane ways. I think we could do an entire episode on how messed up that treatment is. And I'm going to recommend a thing. There's a guy called Stephen Hassan, who is a psychologist by trade and a former Moonie, and he has this book called Freedom of Mind. And in that, he outlines the red flags around cults and how cults operate, and what is undue influence, aka mind control. And what I found reading that and having experiences within the mental health care system, not on my own accord, honestly, I was just basically shipped off because my mother thought that they could cure gayness. But yeah, so I compared my experiences and my learning to that. criteria system and found that pretty much every technique that is used in psychiatric treatment would classify under the umbrella of undue influence. And that is like, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what to tell you, because this is manipulation on a very industrial scale. And this is done in the name of suicide prevention, because we take it for as a culture. I'm not talking about you two, but as a culture, we take it for granted that suicide prevention is a good thing. And for the greater good, as per Grindelwald, everything is permitted. And by everything, I mean families reporting on each other, family members reporting on each other, and torture and electrocution, really, because that's what ECT really is. And pretty much everything that as long as the result is achieved and the desired result is that you're no longer suicidal, okay, I mean, even if it does work and even if it's effective, it shouldn't be the end goal, because it can make people's lives really miserable and a lot of money is wasted on this crap. And this is done with the knowledge that everybody dies anyway, right? So this entire endeavor is just perverse, and I'm not going to go into the rabbit hole right now, because there are so many things that I could talk about regarding this. But point of contention here with the right to die is that if we are calling it a right, then why is it not available for everybody? And one of the most common arguments I hear is that it is available. If you want it bad enough, you're gonna take care of it and do it. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy until you take into account how many failures happen each year, and those come with the aforementioned consequences. And just, wouldn't it be just nicer to have the option of dying whenever and however you want? And this could be, seriously, if you want to wait until you're 120, that's included. That's entirely included. Because just as the same thing, I'm coming from the whole bodily autonomy angle, and just like with abortion, like, pro-choice doesn't mean pro-abortion. It means that I don't have the authority over telling you what to do. That's all it means. And by the way, I'm still not advocating for publicly funded abortions, because that's taxpayer money. That's a whole another issue. Like, but if you pay for it, or if somebody voluntarily, as in not through taxes, pays for it, that's none of my business. That's the entire point. I'm not telling women that, okay, everybody should abort or nobody should have kids or whatever, because who the fuck am I to tell that? And this works both ways. It should not be mandated to have that kid if you don't want to, or don't have the means to raise it, or whatever reason. It's not like, the way I approach this is that if a stranger shows up at your house and starts sucking your blood, and you know that they don't have any other means to sustain themselves, but they still doing it to you, it should be up to you whether you want to evict them or let them do it. I mean, if you want to let them do it, if you're that charitable, fine. But I can see that a lot of people would be like, okay, go away, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening during those 9 months. That basically you're being drained, and that's not a trivial matter.
I got a reply to government funded abortions. Maybe a little disagreement, friendly disagreement. I think it should be funded. It would actually save taxpayers money in the future because it costs a lot of money to put people in public schools and all that stuff. So, and plus, if a person is,
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on the public school system.
yeah, it sucks too. I mean, education.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I'm coming from the idea that everything that is managed by the government is wasteful and ineffective, because that's what I'm witnessing here. That's what's been happening for decades, uh, maybe a century even, in my neck of the woods, and it's just such a waste. The whole thing. It should be like built again from the ground up because it's a mess. But that's neither here nor there. Like that again, we could do a whole nother thing about like how taxation is theft and all that stuff, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing. You guys got any specific right to die related thing to talk about? Because I probably left out a lot.
No, you covered a lot. That was great. Thanks. Like there was a whole lot of stuff there that you said. I appreciate it. Honestly, that was great.
Yeah.
I know that you also like think like I know there's a topic as well though that we were looking to discuss, and that was like, how does one determine if someone's able to be the criteria for being accepted for the ability to have a right to die if it was legal? And there is a lot of question about do you need to be terminal ill? Do you need to be this and that? Is mental illness enough? What are your thoughts on all that, and like what kind of world could we live in if there was a universal right to die that would be sufficient for the rest of the people to make them feel comforted by the slippery slope argument, because they're so afraid of that the whole world will just commit suicide. So like what parameters could there be, if at all, do you think?
I wouldn't do like parameters. The whole slippery slope thing has been proven wrong on various other examples. Like, for example, I know for a fact that in dry counties, DUI rates are higher. Prohibition usually backfires pretty badly when it comes to like things that don't hurt anybody else, like has to do with just your own body. In the Netherlands, actually drug use decreased after legalization, and there's no social problems caused by marijuana. There are social problems caused by other things, but not by, like, drugs are not really a problem, because they're legal, they're like regulated, they are like there's no fraud involved. I think the only thing that that should be paid attention to regarding the right to die is to avoid fraud, to like, because there are some cases where inheritance is at play and all sorts of like money stuff, and I think it would be the system should focus on making sure that the decision is actually made by the person themselves and not under pressure from somebody else. That is the only legitimate criteria, I think. I don't know how to ensure that because I'm not a lawyer, but that would be the legitimate aim of any kind of regulation to make sure that nobody is murdered through the same system that enables people to have the right to die, because murder is just as bad as denying somebody the right to die. That's the entire thing. Like, that's a violation the same way as forcing somebody to live. It's the same morally equivalent problem. Because in both cases you are messing with somebody's right to live or right to die, which, by the way, imply one another. Because you cannot have a right to live without the right to die, because otherwise then it becomes an obligation to live, and that's not how it's written. By the way, look into the ninth, because that kind of spells this out kind of explicitly. Basically, the right to live cannot be construed into a duty to live, and that's why I wouldn't have any sort of like medical criteria, because first of all, mental illness as a concept is fundamentally flawed, and I mean, just think about the fact that about 30 years ago, which wasn't that long ago, being gay was a mental illness, and there's still a struggle for the trans community to be taken out of the big book of classifications, for the same reason, by the way. Like, people's identities were and are policed by the mental health industry, and everybody could be accused of mental illness. All it takes is just being open and honest about your feelings, or doing something motivated by those feelings, and somebody witnessing it and reporting it. That's all it fucking takes. And it doesn't matter which country, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could be accused of mental illness. You could be put on drugs without your consent. You could be restrained, like actually tied to a freaking bed. Like, I don't want anybody to experience that, but people would probably learn from it if they did. It's very it's a reality check to experience that. As for like the terminally ill thing, like, everybody is terminal in the long run. Let's face it, everybody's gonna die. The whole right to die thing is giving people the opportunity to pick how and when they're gonna die, and that's it. Like, that's what it's all about. That's the choice about. And I mean, if you don't want to know, that's your business, but I, for one, prefer to have it on my little calendar and have the reassurance that, okay, this is when I'm gonna die, and this is how, and this is what's gonna happen. That is just such a peace of mind that, like, that's worth pretty much everything. And I don't know, like, if you cannot empathize with that, that's fine, but at least try to understand that some people draw comfort from that. And I mean, I wasn't having any problems. I wasn't really technically suffering until the obstacles appeared, because there was a previous attempt that I had. It wasn't too serious, like, it wasn't too well planned out. It was basically I was bored in college and tried to hang myself and got caught. What it did was it was embarrassing. The most embarrassing experience I ever had. It's like being caught naked. And I don't know if I actually regret not dying at that point, but it's certain that if I did die at that point, I wouldn't have a complaint. um, I would have been spared a whole bunch of crap that happened in connection with it, and then afterwards. I did find other things to do for about 10 years, but at the same time, I was always certain that I don't want to do the whole old age thing. I don't want to do the whole being dependent on others for basic necessities kind of thing. I've seen people get old and forget who they were and lose bladder control and that kind of stuff. And it's not pretty. And I don't think it should be all that weird or peculiar or even taboo to say that, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through that. I mean, if you have a supportive family and they are okay with it, and you're like completely latched on to life and want to do it until everything falls apart, fine, do that. But don't say that everybody's required to do the same thing, because that's fucked up. I mean, that's kind of like forcing the world to follow one particular religion, or like one political party like taking over and being the one party. We had that for 40 years. It wasn't fun. And like it wasn't fun to a point that it kind of culminated in a low-key genocide. The force part is what bothers me with this. If people had the option to die whenever and however they want, I don't think the world would be very different on the outside, on the global perspective, on the big scale. But there would be a lot less pain in the world. There would be a lot less trauma going on, because the other thing is that when suicide is done in secret, and it has to be done in secret without the preparations being public, and without any kind of involvement from loved ones or whatever, then that means that's a shock to that community, whether we're talking family, friends, whatever. The surprise factor, I mean, everything is easier if you're prepared for it. I know this from countless experiences, not just mine, other people's too. If you have experience, like if you have like some sort of preparation going on, if you know what's going to happen, if you know what you're going into, that's a whole different picture than just opening a door and finding a body. It's a whole it's a world of difference, especially with young folks like teens. If they are like, if I'm the person who's dying and I have a younger relative, I'm gonna like explain to them, okay, I've done living, this is what's gonna happen, this is what you are going to see, this is what you should expect, because if you do that, there's a lot less trauma and a lot less sadness and a lot less complications if you just have that connection going on, and not just, happen upon a random body somewhere.
Wow, Lilla, you made some great points. Now, the points you're making are getting people to think, and that is so freaking important because the current state of the right to die movement is pretty pathetic. They're obsessed with labels, they're obsessed with protocols. Like, I don't even think we should be using the term, we should be focusing on terminally ill, physically disabled, mentally ill, or whatnot. The right to die should be just universal, and it would get rid of all this nonsense baggage. It's like you don't have to be sick, you don't have to be mentally ill to say that, well, I don't like life, I find it boring, or you know I want to die now so I won't be catastrophically harmed in the future. Just get rid of the labels, get rid of the protocols, and say, I am my own possession. I have every right to check out of existence. That's one of the most important rights an individual can have regarding their bodily integrity, is to opt out of existence. But it's also the right that's the most neglected. It's neglected by the pro-choice movement. It's neglected by the human rights movement, people of all political and social spectrums. Yeah. So we'll have to say.
Yeah, and what it comes down to with that is that there is this unspoken assumption that if you want to direct your own death, then something must be wrong with you. You must be mentally ill by default. Like, that's one of the criteria of being declared depressed, is that you want to die, even though you have nothing else going on. You don't have the low mood, you don't have the whatever, any other thing going on. It's just that, okay, I want to limit my natural existence. That is in itself considered to be some kind of derangement, and that is the problem. That's why they can justify this neglect, because the human rights movement is like, we want to keep people alive, we want to make them happy, whatever. And that's a noble motivation on the face of it, and I'm not saying that these people are bad people. It's just that they are not touching this issue with a 10-foot pole, because what if we are enabling mental illness, meaning that that there is this belief that if people have everything they need, and they are like tweaked to like their personality could be altered in a way that they no longer want to die, and that seems to be the end goal for some reason. I mean, I'm witnessing this with the queer community, that there's this assumption that if people are respected and treated right and supported, then they're not, that counts as suicide prevention. And in some cases it works, because in some cases bullying can lead people to considering suicide, but that's not the only narrative. That's not the only thing that's happening. Like, the entire thing, the entire problem with this is that the narrative is monopolized by the preventionists, and they think there is only one way, there's only one reason to want to die, and that is social rejection, bullying, and in some cases economic hardship, which are, by the way, legitimate reasons to want to die. And also, I would consider other solutions before dying if that was the only reason. But when those other solutions are exhausted or not available for some reason, it's still a legitimate choice to say, okay, I don't have the money that I need or want. Let me die so, I don't know, my kids can have a better life or something. That's a completely legitimate choice in my book, because it's a conscious decision. Now, the argument on the preventionist side is that it's never a conscious decision because nobody in their right mind would want to die. And that is bullshit. I mean, let's say it. Let's make it clear.
Damn
That's
right.
completely bullshit. I mean, if we accept this narrative that if you want to die, something must be wrong with you, or you're not in your right mind, then that would include people who died for political causes. That would include people like Bobby Sands, who starved himself to death to protest the British government. That would include all sorts of people who died because they decided that this is the right way for them. Like, there's an example of somebody who actually said that he wanted to quit while he was ahead. Like, his idea was that the ideal death is that happens on the top of life, like when everything is going well, when you're at the happiest. This is John Otway, the singer of the band Dissection. He has extensive interviews and stuff about this. Like, the whole idea was that he would die on the top of his career, and he did it. And like, that is not something that doesn't sound like depression to me. It sounds more like, okay, this guy got a plan. Like, an entire, you might not agree with it, but that still doesn't, not agreeing with something does not mean that you can call it a mental illness. By the way, I'm witnessing this tendency in political discussions a lot lately in the past decade. I've seen articles in some way calling the other side mentally ill. Like, there was a thing that there is even a hashtag called liberalism is a mental illness, or there was the atheist community, which is where I started out at, calling religion a mental illness. And I'm like, don't use that label, because they can turn it around and call you mentally ill for disagreeing with them. That's not the way to have a discussion. That's not the way to have a political, meaningful discourse. Calling your opponents mentally ill just for their opinions is about the lowest you can go in a political context, and it happens a lot. Like, there's this whole idea of that this is mostly done by conservatives, by the way, but I've seen it done the other way too, like the whole toxic masculinity crap. Like, how are you going to reach any kind of compromise, and how are you expecting to live together if you call the other side toxic just like that because they have different ideals than you do? That is, I mean, yeah, it's a phenomenon, and it's funny sometimes, and you have the memes, and sometimes you have to vent a little bit. But in a democracy, this kind of behavior is not going anywhere. It's just deepening the division. And this is what is happening with the whole right to die thing too, because like, even within the official right to die movement, I got kicked out of a few forums because I mean, they could not believe that somebody who is in perfect health and in their, at the time, 20s wants to have their own death planned out, because somehow, like, that's not for you, that's for the old people, that's for the terminally ill. I'm like, hang on a minute. Why? Like, why is it such a yeah, like you said, Danny, fuck the labels. Just get rid of this whole distinction, because then we're getting into this whole debate on who's ill enough, who's old enough, who's mentally sound enough, and that is a very subjective and very it's like every case is different. Like, seriously, I've been witnessing the medical system half from the inside, half from the outside, and every case literally is different. Like, even with the same disease, no two people have the same exact prognosis and progression. So, like, having rules based on like what condition you have, that can backfire pretty badly, and even can lead to people who could live dying because they think they should, because that's how the law is. So it should not be tied to any sort of condition. It should be tied to one thing, which is the individual's decision, because hey, it's their life, it's their body, it's none of our business.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. That was brilliant. Yeah, and unfortunately that, the labels and stuff, that's where the current right to die movement is stuck at.
Yeah.
And it's like
and
with
they're scared. I think they're scared
yeah, of
to
course.
go into the general population thing. I mean, I can understand it, because there's even opposition to that. There's even opposition to their version, their limited version of the right to die. There's even criticism for that, like, oh, you're promoting death, or you must not give in to, like, there was that video you sent me, the Compassion and Choices advertising video.
Oh yeah, crazy
First, yeah, the first comment on that was that you should not give in to the temptation of suicide because that's from the devil. Like, it's okay to say, I cannot do something because it's my religion. But the moment you say you cannot do something because of my religion, that is like, if you're a government entity, that's straight up illegal. If you're not a government entity, that's still fucked up, because like, you have to realize that yours is not the only religion around, and you have to live with that, because that's what living in a secular country means. Like, you have to acknowledge that your neighbor might be something else.
That's the problem with theism too, is it just has an idea about life, and it thinks that that's just the objective truth. Like, God has given us this objective truth that we're born with a life and a soul, and you can't destroy that by any means. You can't even insult it, much less destroy it. And I would argue that theism is just like a massive part of this groupthink mentality of just prevention, save lives, life is good, blah blah blah. It's because it's ingrained in us, and it's just a cultural norm that we have to somehow change.
It's interesting that you say ingrained, because some of the preventionists I've talked to say that it's instinctual, like it's genetic, that everybody at the bottom of it wants to live. And I have two things to say to that. One, cool, you want to live? Fine. I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to kill you, right? Same courtesy expected in my direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't know if like, even if something is instinctual, that's not a one-to-one like, even if something is genetic, that's not a 100% deterministic thing, because there's so many things that could happen. Plus, we are human beings We're not just, operating on instinct. We have a brain right here that can actually use logic and stuff. So if we're just going on instinctual behavior, then we would still be like living in caves and like bashing each other's heads in with rocks. Like instinctual behavior is very again, what's instinct, what's nature, what's nurture? That's a whole another debate. The other thing is that you cannot really determine what is instinct after literally 2,000 years of just bashing a cultural idea into kids, like literal fucking toddlers. Like it was, especially here in Europe, Christianity not just, spread and did its thing, it was spread by force and by literal beatings of kids into it. And it was like, everybody's talking about the whole residential school scandal. Guess what? That happened here as well, except earlier, like in the 800s, 900s. That the exact same stuff was happening. And nobody talks about that because it was so long ago that people forgot. But it's the same process. And it was all monotheistic Christianity. And by the way, Islam did the same thing in the other half of the continent, like the Asian parts. Monotheism is like there is this idea baked into it that there's only one way. There's only one God. There's only one version of the truth. Because like, look at the Romans. They were like, hey, you got another God. You don't know ours. Let's adopt yours and have a bigger God family. They didn't really, I mean, yeah, of course they were like culturally oppressive to some extent, but there wasn't this idea of just like, my God is the only one and all the rest of them should be outlawed and demonized, literally, by the way. That's where, because the very word demon comes from there.
Well, I mean, the question is, can we have the real right to die in a non-secular world? And I don't think we can, because we have adults who basically believe in Santa Claus fairy tales. And they use these fairy tales to impose their will on others and force them to stay alive. They're living for Jesus. I mean, even within atheistic societies, you see this nature worship. There's always this,
or some sort of residual. I think that there's a lot of residual stuff. Like even within the atheist community, I've seen it. Like people struggle with opening up about things that have been taboo have been made taboo by religion. Like talking about sex is still kind of hard. Talking about death is still kind of hard. There's also this whole BS about like major atheist influencers confessed that they still get feelings of guilt from their upbringing. There's still residual fears, the fear of death, the fear of judgment. You don't just forget that the moment that you stop believing in God. That's still there years after that. And I'm considering myself very fortunate because I never really believed in all that stuff. So I don't have that to that extent. I don't really know what they're going through. But I mean, look at, for example, Dan Barker was a freaking pastor for decades and then had the balls to quit and become the opposite. That's just freaking amazing to me, because how the fuck do you just get out of that mindset, because that's a very closed mindset, and it can be very scary to confront the world as it is, and like consider that, okay, if that's not true, then that's also not true, and then what is true? That I kind of went through that when I was kind of coming out of communism, because I had that as a kid, and I was coming out of basically just this provincial thing. Like I was discovering the fact that, hey, there are other countries, there are other cultures, there are other things out there, and it was just kind of blowing my mind at that point. And yeah, there's a hard part where you have to, like, when you don't know anything, and you feel like you never gonna know anything, and you're lost, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? That is coming out of religion. That is, the intensity of it is even worse. And as for, can the right to die exist in a world where religion also exists? I think it can, as long as we seriously get religion out of governance. Like, again, this is me having my own Bible, which is 2040-ish years old, as opposed to 2000. Yes, that was a Constitution reference, viewers. But yeah, seriously, you invented this idea that, okay, get religion out of government, precisely because there are multiple religions, contradictory and mutually exclusive ones, and there are also people who are outside of all that religious sphere, like us, and you have to, as a country, you have to function for everybody. Because that's what the problem was. That's why people fled, and that's how the whole thing started. Yeah, that's the whole point of the experiment, that we should, like, treat human beings as human beings first, and whatever they want to do, worship or not, or worship somebody else, or whatever, that's their business. That's the whole thing. Now, how do you do that in the real world? How do you implement this practically is another question, especially because there are some factions who think that their morality is the morality. And this is like I said, this is the problem in monotheism. They think that whatever criteria they've got are the objective criteria, and they seriously have to realize that it's not, because if they don't, then we get very bad results. One fanatical legislator can do a lot of damage. Yes, I'm talking about you, Barrett.
The Supreme Court, it's a Catholic theocracy, basically. But religious people, they vote for religious politicians, and that's
and this is what needs to end. The whole thing about I don't know what his policies are, but I'm voting for him because because Jesus, because we worship the same Jesus, right? That is what needs to stop somehow, because otherwise it's gonna fuck up everything for everyone, not just for people who want to die, but for people who want to live even more.
Yeah. I have another question. You said, you have a history of debating these pro-life people and these preventionists. And, I noticed when you talk to me about it, these people cannot come up with an objective theory. that being dead is a negative state. Only the living can experience negative states. But what kind of arguments do you hear the most coming out of these people's mouths?
Oof, there's a lot. We didn't really even get into the whole what's a negative state, what's not, because that's not how I operate. I'm like, positive and negative are subjective terms, so I'm not really getting into that. But what I heard a lot were these cliches. Surprisingly educated and qualified people even came up with these cliches. That first, one of them, that like probably the most common, is that what if something good is like, could something good happening in life change your mind, or what could change your mind? And in particular, the mayor was like, what if you fall in love? And my answer to that was, well, then we'd do it together, no problem.
Good response.
But like, but again, this is the assumption that you want, that you can only want to die because your life is particularly bad right now, and you're in a bad situation, and you feel like there's no other way out. That's not what my situation is. And when people are like, what if something good happens in life, could that change your mind? I'm like, no. Maybe that could actually get me ready sooner, because my entire thing is that I want to die when my life feels complete. And I got to that point about 2 years ago, but well, stuff happened, mainly COVID and Lauren. For those who don't know, travel restrictions got in the way, and then I got a breakup going on, so my life wasn't as great as I thought it was. But the entire thing with me is that I want to do it when my life feels complete, when I'm like, okay, I accomplished everything I could. Can I retire now? Like, this is my whole thing. Like, this is my I have a Zoom picture logo thing which says a bullet is a completely fine retirement plan, and that's what it is for me. That's what it is. It's just an equivalent of a 41k or what the fuck it's called. And that's it. The other argument that I hear a lot is that well, sometimes people get better, like they go to therapy and whatever, and they no longer want to die, and those people should be given a chance to try out all the treatments and therapies and whatever before they actually either commit suicide or in some kind of way end their lives. And to that, I'm like, well, nobody's taking that away from you. Like, that still could be an option. We're just adding another option that people could use. It's like, it doesn't have to be either or. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that people do, like, for example, encouraging addiction via pills, and like trying to solve everything with medication, because that can have bad consequences and side effects and whatever. But for some people it works. Whatever. For me it wouldn't, because I know it wouldn't. But for some people it works. For some people therapy works. For some people death works. It's just another option among all the others. It's like nobody's taking away the voluntary treatment stuff. I am against involuntary treatment, however, because just that's not like, just think about it. getting locked up without due process. That's just, in any other context, that would outrage anybody's sensibilities.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what kind of sect you are, no matter what kind of background you're in any other context, that would make your blood boil.
Yeah,
and in this context, it's somehow acceptable because we're saving lives. I mean, yeah, of course, fine. If somebody is a danger to others and trying to hurt people and trying to harm people, then take them out. But otherwise, like, if it's just about their own life, none of your fucking business if you're the government or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to die whether we like it or not. So the concept of saving a life is just silly to me, because you can't save a life, you can prolong it, because even if you want to live, you will have no choice over your death if you live long enough. And it's like, whether you live to be 20 or 100, you're going to lose everything anyway. And to the argument you made, well, what if you fall in love or something? They will never say something like, what if you get into a vehicular accident and become paralyzed and really want to die and can't do nothing about it? They always bring up the what ifs in regards to these positive fantasies.
Yeah. And some of it is not even that positive, because one of these people was like, what if you get pregnant? I'm like, holy shit, no. like how the fuck do you make the assumption that that's what I want?
Yeah.
Wow. That was just wow from the get-go. And there's also a bunch of, like, of course, they are the ones who try to use this as an opportunity to spread the gospel, their particular gospel. I had actually mostly Christians, but I had a Muslim one in college who was like, well, you have a purpose and you were created for a purpose, and it would make you so happy if you could do that instead of dying. And I'm like, what is that purpose exactly? Because I kind of was suspicious already. And he started talking about, being a wife and being fulfilled by that. I'm like, yeah, wrong door.
The whole God put you here for a reason thing. It's, what about the kid born in Somalia and Afghanistan who's going to be slaves all their lives? What is their purpose? You know what I mean? It's such a Western idea.
And like, just think about it. What kind of horrible existence would it be to be created for a purpose? Like, somebody else makes you and decides what you should do and what you want. You have no say in the matter. You have no choice. You have nothing. You're a fucking slave. Like, that's the definition of a slave. You're created for that specific purpose, and you have to fulfill it no matter what. And it's fucking miserable.
And in the same breath, they'll proclaim that they have free will, But God gave us free will.
Yeah, let's not even get into the whole, like, that's so contradictory. That's just ugh.
Yeah, you were put here for a reason. What, to be a wage slave or forced?
Yeah, none of them. Yeah, none of them could actually tell me what that reason might be. Like,
yeah, or to make that, or you could be a slave not to this God but to another person. Like, your purpose is to make me happy and to not leave. So that's your purpose, but you're still a slave.
There's the other thing. There's the other thing I hear a lot. The whole, you're worthy, you're a valuable person, you matter. Yeah. And to that, like, my instinct answer was like, if I matter, then so do my desires. And that means that it matters that I want to have my death in a reasonable time frame and in a reasonable manner. Why doesn't that matter?
Exactly.
Like, why doesn't that matter? Why you don't honor that?
Yeah, exactly. Such a great point.
We believe that people matter. We believe that their suffering matters. That's why we respect them as individuals enough to let them go if they want to.
Well, Lilla, it's been so great having you here and talking about all this stuff. You're amazing. I appreciate you so much. You basically ran so many arguments through the door. I don't know where to start. So it's been a joy and a pleasure. And yeah, thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate you. And if there's anything else you'd like to say, now's your time.
Yeah, you talked about making people think, and yeah, that's pretty much why I'm here, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've been thinking about for years, and I cannot believe that other people don't think about it. I guess if I had like any homework for like outsiders watching this, I would ask them, what do you think, what kind of effect does a prevention talk or 988 call or something, what kind of effect could that have on somebody who's already determined and already know what they want? Because I don't think that people who actually know what they want will be swayed by any of this crap. And that's why the force part is very needed and very crucial to the preventionist effort. And I guess my question to like outsiders and preventionists would be, is it worth it, and why? And just think about it, because we talked about a lot of stuff, and that's kind of the conclusion. Like, is it worth trying to keep people alive if they are really done? And like, even if they are not done, like, is it worth causing pain and harm just to satisfy that doctrinaire inclination? Because it's been called empathy, but I don't think it's always empathy. I think there's a very strong element of, I want to win, I want to be the big dog, the ego stuff, like, I saved this many people. If there's that ego motivation, I guess check yourself, because yeah, we all need to check ourselves sometimes. I used to be evangelical about a bunch of things. I used to be like very raw against religion, and to the point where I was like, let's outlaw it. But I realized that I was going against my own principles, and I checked my own vibes.
Yeah, I got something to add to that, if you don't mind. I would like, for people who enjoy life, I would like for you to put yourself in people's shoes who want to die. How would you feel if you lived in a world where everyone was telling you that you should die and trying to force stuff on you that you don't want nothing a part of? You don't want.
Yeah, like how would you, yeah, exactly. Like, how would you feel if you were about to be executed? If you love life, you would probably be fucking scared, and you wouldn't like it. So it's basically the same thing, just in the other direction.
It's about compassion. It's about respecting the desire of the individual, whether or not to continue or discontinue.
Yeah, and I'd say too, like, why not have some hybrid of both? I mean, just as a compromise, even though I don't want to. I understand that the growing pains of the evolution of acceptance might entail some compromises on our end and their end. So why not have something like a 988 call be a hybrid of the two, where someone's calling and saying, hey, I'm thinking about committing suicide, right? They can do all these attempts to try to get you to like feel better about your life, blah, 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 talk to you about it. Just be there for them. That's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But if
Yeah.
someone's calling and they're saying, yeah, but I'm actually at the point where I am going to do this though. Like, it's sort of kind of like calling to cancel your phone thing, right? Like they have a whole system, they have a whole department dedicated to preventing you from not becoming a customer anymore. They want to keep you. But once you say like, no, I'm out, I'm done, hello, I'm out, like they go, okay, fine. So I was thinking,
Yeah,
like,
I actually had a similar idea to this. Like, if I would run a hotline, I would run it with the inclusion of practical advice on how to get it right, because the worst outcome is not a completed suicide. The worst outcome is a failure, where there is like permanent damage done, and perhaps even to the point that you cannot do it again.
oh yeah, totally. And the failures are what, Danny, like 20 million or something like that, or failed attempts. I mean, it's catastrophic, isn't it?
Yeah, according to the Centers for Disease Control or the World Health Organization, one of those organizations, 1 out of 25 are failed attempts. That means over 1 million people end their lives, and they all go in agony using violent methods, and 24 million survive and forced to grieve another day of existence. And if you look at America, 1.3 million people attempted in 2019, and out of that, like 47,000 succeeded. But unfortunately, in most of the success rates were nooses, gunshots, poisoning. And that's what we want to prevent. We want to prevent violent deaths. We're about gruesome suicide prevention.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's been a joy though. And your points have been so great. I appreciate it so much. Yeah. If that's all, that we can end it, I guess. I'm not good at the ending of the shows, but whatever. We're in episode 10, so we're still growing. We're still growing pains on on how to do this right.
We're getting more comfortable with it. I love that. I love
a little bit, definitely. So that's cool.
The first 5 is like I was just stiff and didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it's still weird.
I never did a thing like this before. Never thought I'd be a part of a podcast or a movement.
Well, it's like a tiny sacrifice of uncomfortability to, I think, relaying a message that we know is so friggin' important, and a cause that is literally the number one cause, human rights cause on planet Earth, that's being neglected. And I really do hope in 50 years or whatever it is, it's just we look back at this and equate it to like slavery or some shit, where we're just like, oh my God, we allowed this many millions of people to die these horrific deaths. Why? They won't. It's like, anyway.
Yeah, if we did not care, we would not be advocating for the unconditional right to die. We care. So
yeah,
because it's
like
all
it's not even about me anymore, because I have my own preferences and plans and whatnot, but it's not even about me anymore. It's about, hey, I don't want anybody else to go through this crap. And it's very important. And this is kind of crazy that this is such an important thing. And to me, it's so obvious that it shouldn't even need to be said, but that's precisely why it needs to be said. Like, that's why it needs to be out there, because if it's not out there, then and we're still fucking sentencing each other to prison for nothing, and
Yeah.
that's fucked up.
It's like cruel and unusual punishment for the innocent. I mean, if you look at
Yep.
like the Constitution, you look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you can apply so many things to to the right to die, from torture to slavery to servitude. I mean, it's if you say you have a right to life but not the right to die, which is in all these the right to die is never mentioned in human rights documents, then they're missing 50% of the freaking equation.
Yeah. And again, like I said in the beginning, it's a right to life, not a fucking duty.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Oh, big time.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming and voicing your opinions on so many awesome things, and it's been great, and I wish you the best. Her handle is that Liberty Bitch on Instagram, right?
Yep.
Great. And
And you can find all sorts of art and writing and even recipes on there.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it very much. And if anybody else, wants to come on, feel free. We're going to try to make this a podcast too, where we just, if anybody wants to come and just talk about how they feel about life, it's feel free to email us at righttodie@gmail.com, or go to our website at righttodie.com. You can contact us through there. But yeah, we feel free. We also have a blog. If you'd like to submit a blog, write something and express your views too. We want to make this as interactive as possible, because the larger of a community that we are, the bigger of a voice we have for this movement. So thank you so much for coming, and take care.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and thank you, Lilla, again for your wonderful commentary, and we will see everybody next time. Until next time, folks.
Thanks. Bye.
You have been listening to the Right to No Longer Exist, a Right to Die podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed your time and found the information valuable. Please visit us at righttodolongerexist.com to learn more about our organization and mission statement. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at The Right to No Longer Exist. There you will find links to our individual channels as well. If you would like to contact us, please email therightttonolongerexist@gmail.com. Thank you for your time, and let's remember that during the time that it took to listen to this podcast, dozens, if not hundreds of people endured a horrific death by suicide. Let's fight together for a world where this doesn't happen anymore. See you next time on the Right to No Longer Exist podcast.